afternoon, good evening all, it's Bear here. And I'd like to welcome you to my YouTube channel, aboxwithnolid. A channel I'm creating not just to bring awareness to the realities of complex trauma, but I'm really wanting to get into the mechanisms and the structures behind it in a real world understanding so that you can create paths to heal, or at the very least have the information to ask the questions you need to from the practitioners you are seeking. Now, this is the next video in the adoption series, and this is one I've been wanting to make for a little bit, but I've been trying to find research to back up the belief structures that I have around this component. And yes, it's to do with fear states. And unfortunately, in the capacity that I have, for years, I've not been able to find the studies in the medical construct of the physicality of fear states and how that works. Because I've, over years, created my own interpretation from what I've observed, what I've personally gone through and lived, and what I've asked for help for and understanding for, but also what I've seen so many others and their day-to-day struggles. And with this in mind, this is my perspective. There are some medical backing up for this, but this is just my viewpoint. And I want you to treat it as such, as a way of teasing the questions you need to ask from the professionals that you're working with, or in your own search for understandings and answers. This is not a rule. This is just my viewpoint and what I have learned. With that said, when you look at, and as this is the next video in the adoption series, when you look at preverbal and early childhood or in-utero trauma, a fetus or an infant or very young child is exposed to a threatening environment for a long period of time. That threat response, all the adrenocorticoid steroids, all the way the body deals with that imminent danger, are there at critical points of development. And this is where the studies have not been done, at least not to where I've been able to find, is I've always asked the question, well, if you got an infant or a fetus bathed in cortisol, bathed in the threat response and adrenaline and everything else, how does that change? Because it's not just a switch on, switch off. It's a constant state that is there at critical developmental stages, physiological developmental stages. And the various levels of professionals that I've asked this question of, we don't know. That we don't know is what I'm making this video about, is because for them it's an I don't know or we don't know. For many of us, it's we live in this state of a constant 24/7 fear. And no one gets it. No one understands it. And the only option in most healthcare systems is it's treated as an anxiety. It's medicated into submission for short periods of time until it overrides those medications. All those medications, side effects are when you're taking them to the degree that you need. It's not a viable treatment or management path. Add to that, when you're looking at medications and dealing with chronic fear states or complex trauma fear states, opioid medications are really the only ones that will have a decent impact on the neurophysiological, what you feel, what it does, your body's responses, because it emulates our own body's mechanisms for calming things down, for saying the threat is over. But as we all know, the addictive nature of opiates and the long-term detrimental side effects of synthetic opiates And this is also why we see forms of self-medication and everything else, and that's seeking that same opioid base. But what I want to explain, as I said in the beginning of this video, is my way of understanding this, my viewpoint from years and years of living with it, years and years and years of asking questions, and years and years and years of reading and talking and trying to create at least a why. When in utero, everything the mother experiences crosses the placenta. When you're looking at a mother who knows that she is fighting to keep her child, or is setting up to relinquish, or knows they have no chance of keeping their child, all that threat response, all her neurochemical threat responses, her adrenal and everything else, crosses the placenta. That is the ecology that this baby grows into, that I grew into, that so many in similar circumstances to me grew into. We are bathed in cortisol. We are bathed in adrenaline. We are bathed in all the byproducts of threat and being unsafe. And then if we go through an at-birth removal or a post-birth removal, there's all this reinforcement and all this uncertainty that actually programs our immune response, our threat responses, that this is normal. And that's the key thing to take away from this video. That our entire survival structure, that our entire threat response structure, our entire immune response structure is skewed to being under threat as normal. That is the safe, belonging part of baseline. And we live there. It's not a trigger, it comes in and then it goes out. It's a permanent state. We are wired that way. It's where I've raised in numerous times in some videos, but also in where I've, questions that I've asked and discussions that I've had, where, we look at the PTSD, the freeze state aspect of threat response, the complete shutdown. But if you are born into a threat state, you create a functional state of being in that shutdown state. So many components of your brain's development, your neurological development, your immune systems and digestive system, vagal systems, everything is geared towards your survivability. All of that gearing is at the expense of other components, and it becomes geared and wired and developed and functions that way. Now, the downside of that is, put it in the context of you're in a stick shift car, a manual car, and you're only able to change in the second gear, first and second gear. Or you're only able to go from first to fourth. Maybe a better analogy. Well, they're both pretty accurate. You've got one lot where if you can only go into second gear, those people that have gone through early childhood complex trauma, that everything is so erratic, that the engine's revving so high all the time, that their life expectancy is a lot shorter. They simply burn out. And then you have the other component of first to fourth, where the strain on the body debilitates. There's a lot of restriction in muscle movements. There's restrictions in, your whole body is basically like you're walking and living in mud your entire life. Your skeletal structure gets altered, you get calcification in vertebra. Your immune response is basically shielding and bracing. That brace response, that infant brace response, becomes so normal that it shuts your body's ability down to move fluidically. It shuts your body's ability to move and exercise and to maintain that flexibility and healthiness for later life. And you just become this rigid structure of a person. And I see both. I see a lot with adoptions, when adoptees are getting older, that's when the immune disorders start coming out. That's when thyroid issues start coming out. That's where cardiac, respiratory, digestive issues start coming to the surface. Where all these chronic illness symptoms start to rear their head. And that is all driven by this fear state, this permanent fear state that is hardwired into our neurophysiology, our endocrine systems, everything, because that was the environment that we were in for such a long period of time, from the moment we were almost conceived. And for some, it is the moment of conception. You can also add to that layers of epigenetics, where if the parents are in that state before conception, that also adds to the complexities around the development of fear states. I understand why the studies are not being done, because it's really challenging to. And it's not an area where there is a lot of profitability. Therefore, they're not looking at it. Because as I said earlier, the only medication that has a decent level of effect on these kind of fear states are opiate based. And we know the detrimental points of that. So what can we do? I don't want to just say this is all bad, 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 bad. Basically, the only way we can work with these fear states is to understand them, our own unique interpretation of them. And because of being prepared for a threat-based environment creates them, we need to create an environment that we live in that supports change. That is really the only way, and it's going to take time. There is no quick fix for this. And I wish I could wave a magic wand. I've lived with this stuff my entire life. It has destroyed so many facets of my life. But I do understand that if you can create a safe enough environment, and this is not the environment where you withdraw and you isolate. That's not safe. That's controlled. I mean a safe enough environment where you're exposed and daily engaging with people in a safe way, where your body and your neurophysiology and all these facets go, this is my new normal. If we can get that to that stage where your body goes, this is my new normal, I can change, then these fear states will ease. Then our body and nervous system and everything will start to change. We have neuroplasticity in our brain. We have all the components and structures for our body to change. We just need to be exposed to an ecology and environment long enough, and they will adapt. So, not all is lost with this. I really do hope that there is a lot more research done. But I'm also not holding my breath. So for those of us, as we live with this, create the safest environment you can whilst being around people, and work and building on that. I will, of course, be doing more videos on this. Yes, this video was partially prompted by some of the comments on a couple of previous videos, but also it's something I live with my entire life. And it's something I know a hell of a lot of other people. I personally know quite a few people that live like this. So you're not alone. And there is always hope. As always, please be mindful, please be respectful, stay safe, and I'll see you all next time.